Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. It's 8 a.m. in Guatemala City, it's 10 a.m. in Washington, D.C., and it's 10 p.m. in Bangkok, in Thailand. Thank you everyone for tuning in from around the world. Thanks for joining us. My name is Bidjan Nashat. I'm the CEO of Atlas Corps. At Atlas Corps, we are so thrilled to be partnering with the Hilton Foundation on implementing the Hilton Humanitarian Prize Laureate Virtual Leadership Institute. This program is meant to help support the next generation of humanitarian leaders. We also welcome the members of our broader Atlas Corps community joining us today. Now is the moment when we need to inspire rising global leaders as we prepare them to manage themselves and others through challenging times. This is why I'm so energized for our two great guest speakers today who are able to share about their leadership journeys right now, today. And I'm joined by two leaders from organizations that have won the Hilton Humanitarian Prize, the world's largest annual humanitarian award presented to nonprofit organizations. One of them is Dr. Carolina Escobar Sarti, the National Director of Asociación La Alianza, Guatemala, which received the Hilton Prize in 2000. Guillaume Landry is the Executive Director of ECPAT International, which is the 2013 Hilton Humanitarian Prize Laureate. I'm honored to be in conversation with the two of you to discuss your extraordinary work to reduce human suffering. And personally, I'm really privileged to be part of a group of child rights defenders, in particular, given that that's a part of my own career that I spent working on this issue. Carolina and Guillaume, thank you so much for joining us. I would love to start with a 2-minute introduction of yourselves. And Carolina, let's start with you.
Good morning, Bidjan. Good morning, Guillaume. And you cannot see Meredith, but she is in everything. And she was in everything since the very beginning. So thank you to the three of you. My name is Carolina Escobar Sarti, and I am the National Director of La Alianza in Guatemala, which means Covenant House. Before, our name was Casa Alianza, but some things changed between 2009 and 2010, and we are now La Alianza Guatemala. And I am also a writer, a poet. I write articles in the newspaper, a newspaper columnist since 1993. Maybe many of you haven't been born there. And I also teach now in only one university. So it's my pleasure to be here, and I thank you for having us here to share some ideas and some reflections around the work that we do. Sorry, because this is Rocco.
Carolina, and if you could add, because the programming focus really shifted a little bit, if you could add 1 or 2 sentences on that area of focus of La Alianza.
Yeah, La Alianza is an institution here in Guatemala. Now is the reference in protecting and preventing trafficking and sexual abuse against children and adolescents. And we now have 3 sites. We started working around trafficking issues, very focused on that issues in 2010. And so we work with children from 10 to 18 years old and adolescents that before we were working with homelessness, but now, as I said, we are working only with sexual abuse and trafficking, not only. And we do that in a very comprehensive way. We have protection, prevention, access to justice, and also advocacy, because we don't only want to work for the ones that came or are coming to us, but we want to work for everybody in the country. So we are doing this comprehensive work under the umbrella of this human rights view. And this is what we do here mostly. And maybe then we can talk more about this work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And you mentioned you're a poet. I'm going to use this as clickbait and to get people to stay on. There's a bit of a surprise that we have for all of you at the end. But for now, Guillaume, why don't I hand over to you and have you do the introduction?
All right. Well, good evening from Bangkok. Good to be with you, Carolina, with Bidjan as well. So, and all the scholars and the guests in this conversation, I hope, as there will be question and answer a bit later. So stay engaged. So as you can see from my name, I come from a French-speaking part of the world. This is Quebec in Canada. It's burning at the moment. So those of you in the US might smell it. But I'm the father of 4 children. And when I have time besides that, I'm also the executive director of ECPAT International. So ECPAT is the largest network of civil society organizations dedicated to combating sexual exploitation of children. So we have 126 members present in 104 countries around the world. And I lead the secretariat, which is based in Thailand, with about 40 staff, half of which are based in Thailand. And what we do is adding a value to what the members are doing. So the members are very diverse. Some are really big, like in Jordan or in Indonesia with hundreds of staff. Some are very modest organization with just a few staff. They work on different angles of sexual exploitation of children. About a third of them are providing direct services to children, but some are doing research, advocacy, capacity building, and some only focus on some of the manifestation, like in travel and tourism, online sexual exploitation, child marriage, or in trafficking, for instance. But us at the Secretariat, we try to add a value to what they do. So we conduct research, we focus on the innovative, the emerging trends, trying to advocate for changes, piloting new initiative, so that at the country level, the organizations that are really on the front line benefit from sort of more space for them to act and change the life of children exposed to sexual exploitation.
Thank you very much. And you can see from the comments coming in, we have those scholars in this community from here, Algeria, Ghana, Pakistan, and Nicaragua, many other countries listening and watching and observing. And one of the things that I'm sure many of those young professionals are interested in is how you started out, right? You've dedicated, both of you have dedicated decades of your life and career to this humanitarian work. What inspired you to take this first step into this field? And Guillaume, I'm going to start with you and then hand over to Carolina.
Well, when I was young and I had more hair, I suppose, it's an opportunity. After university, I was offered a job to work on the question of anti-personal landmine. This was a subject matter that Canada promoted a lot 20 years ago with the Ottawa Treaty. And as such, I had the opportunity to go to the Balkan in Europe and see the effect of landmines on children, and came back to Canada and started raising awareness on those matters. And it just drew interest, and that's something that stays today. It's a simple, but it's a complex issue at the same time. It's fascinating to just try to go beyond the buzzword and really truly engage to say, is it working? Is it really that the problem? What are the push and pull factors? That curiosity to really sort of challenge yourself. I see that the ideas that I had 5 years ago are not quite the same today. And that space is really stimulating in many ways. I think when I became a bit older as well, having my own children, you also relate to it to another level with time. And I think it exposes your own vulnerability in that engagement, which provides some depth, I suppose, some more compelling aspect to it. But I must confess, it didn't start with it. It started with an intellectual passion for it, and it grew to become also something rooted in who I am in my life.
Thank you so much. And I can relate to many of the things you said, as my humanitarian career started out in the Balkans as well. I have a very fond memory of those experiences and the people. Carolina, what was that for you?
I don't know exactly what, if only one thing inspired me, because in different times of my life, there were many things that inspired me. But I will start from when I had this memory of consciousness, and it was when I was 5 years old, and we were at school. And I saw the report some days ago when I was 5, and the teacher said that I was defending a classmate of mine that was there. And she was crying because somebody took the bread that she was trying to eat during this time. And that inspired me a lot to see that when I was 5 years, I was like consciousness about injustice. And then when I was 12, I remember that when we were with my sister, we were going with my oldest sister to a little farm that we have outside the city. We saw a pile of bodies, naked bodies that were killed and leave there in the road. And this really shocked me because it was during our civil war, our internal war. And that meant that I was moved, very moved. And then I forgot that. And because I needed to forget. And after that, when I was an adolescent, I started to go to different places here. Imagine, in Guatemala today, 1 of every 2 children under 5 years old are malnurtured, chronically malnurtured. And every hour, like 11 girls between 10 and 18 years get pregnant. So how can you be indifferent, or how can you not see? How can you be blind in the front of these matters? So these problems, these social problems. So there were many things, my family, my life, my own life, but especially Guatemala. Guatemala is a character that, a character in my life. Guatemala inspires most of the things that we are doing, and seeing what is happening here. After the pandemic, we had white flags everywhere. And this was because many families were outside in the city, like asking for food. And this continues until now. This was in the 2020, and now we are in the 2023. So there are lots of things that inspire me here. And then, so when we started with homelessness, you can see like 4 blocks away from the place where we work in Guatemala City, because we have 3 sites, as I told you before, 1 in Guatemala, 1 in Antigua, and 1 near the Mexican border that works more with migrants. A few blocks away from my office, you can see homelessness. And we don't have children that are homeless now, supposedly, because the institutions of the state institutions take them and put them back into their families, supposedly, or into their communities, or in some institution like ours. But you can see homelessness here everywhere. So Guatemala is an inspiration. And we had this war that was like cutting our history in 2 pieces. And this made a very big difference.
Thank you both for sharing, and you made it very visual. And I want to pick up on something you said about conflict, and just looking at the people we have here in joining us and watching. I saw a comment coming from Liberia, Nigeria, and then Russia, and shortly after Ukraine. And I just want to take a step back, right, and make sure we understand this is a global community, and regardless of what countries, what's happening within countries or between countries, we believe in shared values as humanitarians and people defending human rights. And so regardless of where people come from, and what these experiences are right now, we want to bring them together. That's part of what we do, and I really appreciate that you're joining. I wanted to pick up on some of the things because the Hilton Humanitarian Prize Laureate Virtual Leadership Institute focuses on three themes: developing self, developing others, and leading movements. So how do you center these themes in your work, internally and externally at your organization? And Guillaume, I'm going to turn back to you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, developing self, I suppose what came to my mind when I was thinking about it is two things. I think reading. It's something we lose in our society. We consume a lot more images and rapid sort of elements. Everyone says they don't have time to read reports, so they go to the executive summary, they go to the conclusions. And I understand I'm part of that society, but at the same time, if you really want to affect society, change social norms, it's so complicated, it's so difficult, and we reinvent the wheel constantly. We duplicate efforts. We try to do things that didn't work already 20 years ago. So that intellectual sort of space to just read, look back at and learn and think about different matters, cross-check a little bit what the academics are saying, and at the same time the practitioners who take a time to write about what they've experienced. It's really something that is hard to keep space for that in our life, but to me that's where you have that flow. I like when I go to a presentation. 2 days ago I was doing a presentation again with UNODC. I don't have notes because it's in me. I should be able to talk about it. I shouldn't have someone briefing me about it as if I'm the king of the world. So that element of having that curiosity that translates into making connections in your brain when you talk about those issues is important. I think for the developing others, and this element of transmission requires a lot of humility at the same time. After transmission and capacity building, those buzzwords come with the perspective that I know and others don't. So I'm full and they're empty. I'm going to transfer them my wealth of knowledge. But I like to think about the Polish doctor who is behind the origin of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, right? Janusz Korczak, who was saying that children's right is about elevating ourselves to the height of children. So it's kind of an image where you need to adjust yourself, and that's the spirit of engaging with people who might not have access to some aspect of realities, and you can share. But there's a learning you make as well because they are the experts of their own realities. So that element is really important. As a network, it's the heart of thing. I cannot make sense if those organizations are not on the ground fighting on a daily basis and see what is happening. I need their eyes in order to make sense and build those connections. But when I make those connections at the international level, I have a duty to send it back to them. So it's a flow, that elements of thinking about others. And I suppose that the notion of leading movements, there are so many principle, article, theory about types of leaderships. I'm not too sure exactly where I situate myself, but I suppose by the strength of ideas and being able to make connections and work hard and demonstrate your ethics, I think in today's world, it's something to me that is so precious, ethics. So if you are able to be coherent in what you promote, what you do, and elevate yourself above the sometimes the nitty-gritty of daily life, that endures in your career. So that's something also I value for myself. It's easy to say. It's not always easy to do, though. Making choices that are not necessarily the best one for yourself, but that are coherent with what you believe in. This is the kind of value that I want to fight for.
Thank you so much. And Carolina, I wanted to pick up on some of the things you've said and your experience as a child and then in your work in Guatemala. These are big, challenging issues: homelessness, children's sexual exploitation, civil war, this work can be draining, and these experiences. How do you keep yourself motivated and inspired? You mentioned some examples. And how do you help your teams stay energized and resilient?
Oh, Bidjan, this is a very good question. We live in a very, very corrupt and very violent country. So we need to take care of ourselves, because we need to care for others. So the first thing that we ask for is to have this passion for what we do. Without passion here, you don't do anything in working with children in the way we are doing. So we take very good care of ourselves, or at least we try. Because I will put you an example. The nurse that comes to our house every day, she came like 1 month ago, and she was crying and very shocked. And this was because there, in front of her, in the bus that brought her to our casa, they shot a man that was inside the same bus where she came. So imagine the need of care that we have here, because then she was supposed to give attention to our girls. And so what we do, we have this philosophical framework that is our green letter. And in this green letter, it means peace with yourself, peace with others, and peace with the environment. And this is not only words. You need to practice that. So when we hire a person to work at La Alianza, everybody needs to know that letter, and also the children. So I would say that we start from there, but we practice this ethics of caring every day. And it means that, for example, we have 1 day more of vacation every 3 months, which means that we don't only have the 15 days that the law allow us to go on vacation. We have like 19 or 20 days. But also, this means that we go every Friday back to our houses at 12, so we can be with our families without the traffic that forms in the cities after that. This means also that we have 3 days out of La Alianza with our team. We are more than 100 people working here. So imagine we go in groups of 8 or 10 people outside the city to a very nice place that some friends give to us. And then we stay there for 3 days, and they don't have to worry about anything else more than reading or writing or not doing anything or not talking or talking with everybody. So things like that. Or we go to therapy. I personally have my beautiful therapist that I love her, and I use it very frequently because last Friday, a girl that was with us and was reintegrated committed suicide. And this was very shocking for everybody. So we are dealing with all these things on an everyday basis. They cut themselves. They are very violent with others. They try to commit suicide because trafficking and sexual abuse are very traumatic experiences. So what I am talking is that we care a lot. And we have a phrase there at La Alianza that says, we take care of who care. So this is very important, because you only move your passion, because passion is contagious. You only move your passion to a movement of justice when you feel this passion and when you take care of yourself. And I sometimes laugh when the corporation says, we want to pay for houses or for cars or for things that you can see. But what would we do without this beautiful staff, this beautiful team that we have in each place to work with children and adolescents? So we need to invest in the people who care. And there is no other way to go into the souls of the others, because they will be very tired or very mad, or they come from very tough experiences here in Guatemala. So imagine a country where we have more than 73% of poverty. It's a lot. So I am privileged to be in my little apartment, but many people here don't have housing. Housing is a big issue,
Yeah.
and are unemployed, and so on. So you need to be, you need to take care of yourself to care about others. And this is a little part of what we do here.
The little part, these were amazing examples of what you do in the organization. And Guillaume was nodding quite a bit, as was I. And just to give you one example, because I know there are some scholars here of the latest Hilton cohort, one of the things that we have implemented on this notion of well-being is that we give people unlimited well-being coaching from professional coaches as part of this cohort. And we can already see the analysis coming in of those coachings in an anonymized way, but the focus on well-being, on stress management, on psychological issues, as you mentioned, right? You're working with a therapist for humanitarians is so crucial. And not just, as you said very well, the things you can see, but the way people feel and the way they show up in order to be passionate to care for others.
Yeah.
Guillaume, I wanted to turn to you because both of your organizations serve and protect youth. Guillaume, how do you create space for youth, especially for those who have experienced homelessness or sexual exploitation, to contribute to, inform, and lead the work? And in your network, how do you uplift those voices of youth when they don't typically have a voice in the policy and advocacy realm?
Yeah, this is very important to me, I think, because at some point you can preach something because you find it's nice to have, but to me, we're at a critical moment that unless we meaningfully engage with children, we're going to not only continue to fail, but we're going to cause more harm. Because at some point, we need to recognize that sexual exploitation is on the increase. It relates as well to the presence of technology that has democratized access to all sorts of opportunities, but also harmful risks that comes with them. And it's absolutely global. No country is immune to that, as demonstrated in all sorts of data and evidence that we collected globally. But much of it is still a matter of adults wanting to protect children. We might have good intentions, but we're faced with a generation of people who know more than we do about technology. And the way we try to prevent it and depict it doesn't match the complexities of the scenarios and situations the children are faced with. And so it's a necessity to engage with them. Otherwise, even if we have just lots of good intentions, we're not reaching them properly. We fail to prevent, and in the response, we're just failing. We could see in disrupting harm. It's a big research we've done in 13 countries in Africa and in Asia that 40% of the children are saying when they are sexually harmed and seriously harmed, 40% are saying they don't tell anybody. And the first type of category of people they would disclose what happened is other children.
Yeah.
Because they don't trust us. They blame themselves for what happened. They think that even the parents, they'll blame them. They won't understand. It will just get worse for them. So we're at a critical moment where child participation is a necessity. And I think we have had decades. It's a bit similar to children in armed conflict, where we thought this issue is so sensitive. Let's not engage them, right? It could cause harm to them, or in safeguarding, right, elements. So it's kind of comfortable to say that. It means, we're going to do this for them. It's tedious to engage with them, so let's do it without them, and then we run the show. But then the impact isn't there. So at some point is we need to have the courage of doing it properly, safely, all of that ethically. But it is possible to do so. And when you do so, there's two types of participation: engaging with survivors. That's important. ECPAT, we have had in 13 countries conversations with them. It means you don't impose questions on them, and you don't focus so much on tell me all the dramatic things that happen in your life unless you want to talk about it, but more also opening the conversation. Okay, then what happened to you? Can you tell me your access to services? Who were the people that you trusted? What failed? What succeeded? So that they can make recommendations, that they can be part of the solution. They have that role to play. It's not just about telling the story of what happened, they can influence action. And the second, Evan, is engaging all the children. When 20% of the children in one country in 1 year have been sexually seriously harmed online, it's an epidemic. So if they're old enough to be exposed to sexual exploitation, perhaps they're old enough to be part of the solution. So that means talking about sex, talking about technologies, talking about prevention strategies, engaging on those matters should be on everyone's lip. It should be part of our conversation with all the children and the youth in our society. And we've got a lot of work to do to get there, because that's not where we are at now.
I really appreciate it. And it's really important to emphasize there's work everywhere, not just in countries in conflict. There's work everywhere, and especially on the last things you've said, right? There are countries who don't even agree on having that conversation, including with children. There's a comment here from Egypt. I experienced exactly that when working with refugees in Greece, the examples you gave of children not sharing and not trusting. Carolina, I wanted to turn to you. Even when a program is available, sometimes those most in need can't make use of that program or don't know how to. It builds on some of the things that Guillaume said, or don't even trust. What strategies do you use to make sure your organization's programs reach the most vulnerable populations?
Thank you for that question. I think our work talks for us. And when most of the children and adolescents that come to our sites come through a judicial order. So even though we don't have money from the state, from the government, we work very close with those state institutions that are supposed to give protection to the children and adolescents here in the country. And when they need, many times, we heard from the judges that through our lawyers, that they say, we want to send this girl or this boy to La Alianza shelters or to La Alianza site, because there they are going to be protected and they are going to transform their lives. This means that we want them to have a transformative experience when they come to us, even if they are going to stay only 3 months or many years. We are a short time shelter, but we have girls or boys that have been with us for 2 or more years. So it means that when they go out, there is this mouth to mouth, that when they go out, they say, if you have this problem, this sexual abuse or trafficking, you can go or you can call to La Alianza, and then they will bring you in and they will work with you. But there is many other ways, through the courts, through these state institutions that they don't like to have children inside, because they really don't, many times they don't really know how to take care, because they have a lot and they have no human resources. well prepared to take care of them, and they don't put the children and the adolescents in the center of their work, which means they don't participate in their decisions of their own lives. So it is a lot. That is why I was telling you, we have like a table with 4 legs, and one leg is protection, the other was prevention, the third one was access to justice, and the last one is advocacy. Because we're doing advocacy all the time. Not this means not being in the newspapers every day. No, we are doing this little by little. We talk to the people. We talk to everybody. We talk to the young people. We are forming since 2010. We started with this communitarian networking, and now we have 17 networks in the whole country, and we are looking for more. And this means that many young people or people in the communities are aware of children's rights, trafficking issues, sexual violence since 2010. This is another kind of getting there. But access to justice, now we have 72 condemnatory sentences, and one put 7 police officers in prison. So it means that we are also giving them the message that the ones who traffic or sexually abuse girls or adolescents will go to prison. And in advocacy, we are going through laws and protocols and documents and institutions. For example, we didn't have an office when we started in 2010 to work with trafficking issues seriously, in a very serious and comprehensive way. There was no office against trafficking in the general attorney office, and we were asking with the anti-trafficking network to open that. And we have the letter at La Alianza that says, thank you for sending us this letter to ask us to open this office, and we share with you that this office has been created, and this was in 2012. So I don't have the letter here, but I would love to share that with you all. But this is the things that we do. We do a very comprehensive way. We start with the victims and survivors, with listening, connecting, and then we act around them. And they are always in the center of our work, of what we do. And I like what you said, Guillaume, this meaningfully, and you are meaningfully engaged with children. The word meaningfully was so important to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. And there are questions coming through the chat, which I want to turn to very soon. Maybe let me do a final round of questions, one question to both of you. That, of course, right, as part of a Virtual Leadership Institute, we want to focus on building up the next generation of leaders. So what would be the advice you have for the next generation of humanitarian leaders? And I'll start again with you, Guillaume.
All right. I would say be patient. We're in a society where things go fast and we want to climb up the level very rapidly. I think when I look back, one of the best decisions I made was in my early 30s. I was offered an opportunity to lead an organization, and I turned it down. And I think it was the best thing I ever done. I was not ready. And building with time, exposing yourself to learning by doing, meeting people, is that necessity to just see that as life is you have several decades of work ahead of yourself. So give yourself a break. You don't have to be the solution to everything immediately. You can be in the learning curve, and what matters is your ability to be oriented towards solution, to be practical, to contribute with humility. And I think, I learn a lot today after working on this for 20 years. I was in Casablanca just 10 days ago with the Global Boys Summit, because generally we totally fail boys on this matters everywhere. And just seeing organizations who were describing in South Korea, in Bolivia, or in Namibia, what they're doing to try to reach out the boys and adapt their language and work differently. I was just like, wow, I want to take notes. This is so interesting. So that spirit must endure, and that's something to cultivate.
And it's a really, really hard one to be patient. I appreciate it. Carolina, what about you?
I don't like to give much advices, but I want to share what I what I think. And when I am with the students at the university, I always say, trust yourself, be yourself. Don't be afraid of it. If you are afraid, but don't be paralyzed. Inspire others, inspiring yourself. Walk slowly, talk, laugh, be honest, be kind, and love. But there is one thing that we forgot, and I think in these times of so many that we are all running, and we forgot to listen others. And I would say, if you start listening others, you will grow a lot more than if you listen only to yourself. So listening is connecting, and then you can act and go wherever you want. But yeah, trust yourself.
Thank you. We have a question, and it's actually, Guillaume, it's one for you. It's coming from Numan from Pakistan. What role does advocacy play in ECPAT International's work? How does the organization engage with policymakers to affect change and protect the rights of children? And if I may add, Carolina's great description, advocacy is not newspaper articles only.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things. I suppose the first aspect is owning our identity. We're a civil society network. Therefore, where we engage to try to influence decision making, we try to take a bottom up approach, because CSOs, civil society organizations, are supposed to be close to the ground, to the people, to the communities, to the children. And I'm going to totally contradict myself with what I just said, but I'm growing sometimes impatient with the fact that our approach globally is very abstract to very concrete problems. So we go with developing, national plans of actions and policies, and then strategies, and then you go on, and by the time you finish that, you feel that your laws needs to be again revised, and you move on and you stay in that level of abstraction. What we know, and the evidence is clear everywhere, is we don't implement, but we still nurture that context of saying, yeah, but the law is not having the right definition of grooming, or we shouldn't talk about child pornography, it should be child sexual abuse material, and let's go on and do a reform about this. So at some point, I think we can be even complicit in spending time and energy that are so limited to not really wanting to make a difference. So engaging with just bringing that accountability to children, especially when you engage with survivors and children, is saying, it's not happening, it's not working. All the things you're saying that are beautifully laid out in your policies and programs and all of that, it's not making a difference. And it didn't 5 years ago and 10 years ago. So at some point, can we talk about this? So bring it down to that reality, engaging with the strength of evidence. It's the fashion those days. You must have evidence when you influence a decision. So yeah, sure, let's bring research. There's tons of research today happening everywhere. It's actually a bit buzzing, but consume that evidence, digest it, engage with a few pitch, come with clear messages. But to me, it's bringing it back to say, are we serious about making a difference? And can we work at the level of the children so that they can see the effect of what we do? An organization like La Alianza, it's formidable. They're there. They see it every day. So it's formidable, the work that Carolina is doing in that sense.
Wonderful. And it reminds me of this Edwards Deming's quote, "In God we trust, all others bring data." Carolina, there's another question here from Nazir, also from Pakistan. How can we create a culture that is intolerant of sexual abuse and actively seeks to prevent it? It's, of course, a question to both of you, but Carolina, why don't you take this one?
This question could inspire a whole year course at the university. But this means we need to change culture. And this is a very, very long time work. That means that even though Gabriela Mistral, a great Chilean poet, said that childhood is today, children are today, we have to be we have to see ourselves in a process, a human process that doesn't start and end with us. We are part of humanity. We are part of others that have been doing things and that will continue doing things. And that means that maybe you will start things today and you need to change this patriarchy, at least in Guatemala.
We have many other countries too.
We call that machismo in our Latin American countries. And you have to change this mindset because this logic, this patriarchal logic supports and normalizes that everybody can use the bodies of girls and women and children. And so this support this abuse and this trafficking and this because this is modern slavery. We told that so many times that we don't use it anymore, but it is modern slavery. So when a society is tolerant to modern slavery, it means that you need to change the cultural values of a society. And this is little by little, but in a very comprehensive and integral way. You need to work with authorities, you need to work with communities, you need to work with the families of the survivors that you have inside. You need to work with institutions, you have to work with other SCOs. So you need to work with the whole society. And if you can, with the global society for that. And this is a long time work, as I said at the very beginning. So I don't have the receipt. No, the
recipe.
The recipe, yeah. I don't have the recipe, but I think we all need to be compromised. And if you raise awareness around those issues, many more people will see that, and new generations will get more involved in that. So you need to work with children and adolescents a lot, and to put them in the center of all your work. And you have to work at schools and in the families, in everywhere. So little by little, you don't have to save the world yourself. We are a lot of people doing a lot of work, and we can be together to do so.
Thank you. And Itali, your question to Carolina was, what practices can best describe your prevention approach and strategies to combating sexual exploitation and trafficking of children? I assume a lot of what Carolina just said answers that question, but please add more if you want to. And Carolina, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that in working prevention, you have to work in a long-term process again, because you have to go to the communities and to see where your survivors come more from, so that you can make some matches. And you have to do this puzzle before you go and you work back with these communities. So you have to know the communities much more than you know. You have to go to and see what is happening there. You have to listen, and then you have to go back and to share with them and to listen to them. What do they want? In many communities where we are working, there are still many people and young people that are illiterate. They cannot read or write. So you have to do very different process than if you go to the communities that are very close to the urban areas. So you have to see first. You have to make this like diagnose, and then you have to go and work, and you have to know that this will last a lot.
Thank you. I have a question to both of you as we're dealing and working on leader development, and we're investing in people, and you both already gave great examples. One of the things that I look back on is when people who started as interns ended up taking on leadership roles over time. And I'm really curious if you have some of those anecdotes and examples from your own careers, people who you were able to lift up and mentor and support. As many younger professionals are listening, are there some of those anecdotes or approaches that have been successful for you personally or within the organization? Guillaume, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I suppose I could give two examples. The first one is myself, because 20 years ago, I was an intern at ECPAT. So, and now I'm the executive director. So I suppose something has happened in between, but it's the other way around. I think that when I was an ECPAT, an intern at ECPAT or a junior professional, then the executive director and the team are still people I remember their name. I engage with them on LinkedIn and have connections with, because it was truly a formidable team. I've learned so much through them, and I've used that later on in so many situations and jobs. And today, coming back to ECPAT in the past 2 years, I feel I still remember a lot of those situations that I've encountered, conversations that I had, the comments that I made. I remember a stupid thing, for instance. Again, being naive and young, I was asked to do a bit of an investigation regarding sexual exploitation in India. So you have to apologize my stupidity, but I didn't know anything about India. So in the conversation with the executive director, I said, well, the Kama Sutra is from India, so I suppose it's a very open society when it comes to that. So that was absolutely stupid. But the way she reacted to my stupidity was very inspiring. Obviously, she corrected me, and luckily, but she did it in a very respectful, firm way, and explained it to me. It was super clear. I felt ashamed with my comment there, but the way she professionally handled a mistake that I made and made me learn in the process and still being able to go on was inspiring. It's the small things sometimes that matters. And so I think today, recently, interns that we have here at ECPAT have moved on and got sort of jobs and to the next steps in their professional careers, and how basically in the way they engage, I try to put the emphasis on what are the skills that they learn, because sometimes in our sector we put so much emphasis on the content. So they did a research on this and that, and they participated in the report on this and that, but the skills that you need will come across whether you work on any subject matters. Are you organized? Are you good in languages? Are you able to fill a database? Are you reliable when it's time to do administration or logistics? That's the basis. And internships are the occasion to be able to gain that, so then you can go above and then maneuver in the content of what really passionates you. But so these are the kind of things that I would look forward then to nurturing in the relationship with interns.
Carolina, what about you and your experiences and your approach?
Yeah, we also learn and grow as a community, but I was wondering, I want to say that for us, the most important thing is to provide the boys and girls that we serve, that we guide, an opportunity to transform their lives. And for me, the thing that changed, I don't know if I am answering your question exactly, but what came to me when you were answering is that the most important thing is to see their lives, that they are going out of, not of poverty. They believe in themselves. They start to have a family. They start to grow their own independent life. They start little business, or they are going to the university. And I remember Jenny, she was a girl that came, she was 13 years old when she came to us. And she was abused and trafficked in one of the most beautiful sites of Guatemala, Lake Atitlan. And this is a very touristic place. And she was sold there so many times that when she came to us, she was completely destroyed. And the family was not there to support her. And the mother and the father, no, the mother and all the family didn't believe what she was telling everybody. This is one thing. Only to listen and believe creates a whole new experience, a whole new world for them. And from then, she started to change little by little. And now she is the supervisor of call center, a very big call center in our country. And if you could interview her, she tells much better than myself in English what her life experience was about. And so for us, we need to learn and grow as people, as a community, to be more for these young girls and boys that are with us. And we have seen so many changes. We have also seen girls and boys that went back to the same things, because Guatemala is not exactly the land of opportunity. So when they go back to their communities, there is no health services, education, there is no employment. So we have a very strong reintegration program. Right now it's getting better and better, but we have learned a lot about that, because when they returned, many of them went back to the same activities, which means they learned to be abused since they were children, and this is what they know. And so they went back to this. And we have learned about that so much. And we have, to be very humble of what this wonderful team is doing. And we are very proud also.
Thank you, Carolina, and for that story as well. You mentioned English, and we're coming close to the end, and I want to tell you about the surprise. You mentioned English, and we have 3 non-native English speakers here, and I also wanted to acknowledge, Carolina, that you are a poet, and you have something you are going to share with us, and then we will spend time listening, and then we wrap up the call.
Thank you. I will read a poem. This is the 4 of 10 books, and the name is We Are Not Poets. And so the index is the first poem also, and every verse is the next. So I will read only the first in Spanish, so you can hear it is music, so you can hear the music inside. And then if you want, I could translate that to English, but it says, no somos poetas, somos apenas amantes, suicidas con la cuerda en la mano, caminantes de antes, usurpadores de abecedarios. No somos poetas, somos adivinadores de oscuras cavernas, transeúntes por azar y locos por vocación. Somos talladores de nubes, lluvia sostenida, cuerpo que recuerda, hambre insatisfecha, confesión última, dueños de medio corazón, límite de penumbra, sangre que camina el mundo, puerto de anclaje y despedida. Solo somos tiempo, una carta interminable que continúa escribiéndose sin fecha de entrega. Somos una arruga en el Mediterráneo, y esto no es un poema, sino credo levantado, el caos, el misterio, el asombro y el verbo, la santísima palabra en el universo de la salamandra. Somos el fuego robado, para siempre. Fundamos la memoria de la luz y el perfil de la montaña. Probamos primero la sal en el océano de nuestros ojos y nos supimos robustos árboles, no ramas quebradizas. Aullamos a la luna, mediando el sol su eclipse, e hicimos el amor en los 7 mares. Soy la luz y fue la luz. Todos somos, menos poetas.
Thank you so much. And even if you don't understand Spanish, it is definitely music. I want to thank you both for sharing your experience and wisdom with us today. I want to thank everyone who joined us for asking wonderful questions. And as both of you have mentioned, to show a key leadership skill of listening as well as asking the right questions. To me, the best summary of listening to both of you is the Nelson Mandela quote that says, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." And I want to thank you for being part of the community. I hope we bring everyone together like this many more times and build the next generation of leaders going forward together. Thank you both, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you. And keep up the good work, the scholars.
Thank you.